In this special episode of the Happy Hustle podcast, we are releasing another segment from our Happy Hustle Online Summit. So today we have on Mr. Jeff Lerner, and Jeff talks about in this episode how to create impactful work. We talk about passion, that inward calling on your heartstrings, that purpose, that outward serving mission, and then that positive impact. We're going to be diving into this episode of the Happy Hustle podcast. Do you want blissful balance in your personal and professional life? Great. What's up, guys? My name is Kerry Jack, and I want to help you happy hustle a life you love, one full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, a professional model / actor, a digital marketing specialist, a podcast host, author, a biohacker, an eco-warrior, a martial artist, a hippie cowboy, and a humanitarian. My goal is to educate, inspire, and entertain you to live a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. It is time to happy hustle your dream reality. Jeff Lerner, man, I'm so grateful for you. Let me relegate Garrett to the attendees list. No offense, it's not personal. He knows I love him. All right, Jeff Lerner, man, thank you so much for being on here, bro. I so appreciate you. Let me get you a proper intro, and then the floor is yours. You're a serial entrepreneur, musician, author, speaker, podcaster, and founder of Entre Institute. Jeff is a 5-time Inc. 5000 CEO with over 100 million in sales to his name, who is also happily remarried with 4 beautiful children and living his dream life. Jeff, man, you got such an inspiring story, but you truly are a happy hustler, and I'm so grateful for you. And yeah, man, the floor is yours. We're going to be talking about personal development, and that is something you know all too well, and I'm excited to see where you go with it, and just learn from you, bro. So the floor is yours, man.
Well, Kerry, I'm so grateful to be here. I hope everybody saw my comment about Garrett. I didn't know I was coming up right after Garrett, but I just beamed with a big old smile when I came on and saw Garrett, like one of the truly legendary individuals in the space of serving other humans, one of the least ego-based humans I've ever met, honestly.
So true.
I don't know if he's still here, but Garrett, like, so much love. So yeah, Kerry, we haven't caught up in a while. You can probably, I know you guys come in with these fancy backgrounds and, balling out, and I don't know, my wife kicked me out. I'm just coming to you from my apartment, my new little man cave efficiency. And, it's a hard, no, I'm totally kidding.
Okay. I was like, whoa.
He's like, are you sure you want to be talking about this right now? No. So the reason I've been so hard to get a hold of, the reason, frankly, I haven't gotten back to Garrett, I have recently, some changes happened in my organization. And this is highly relevant to what I'm going to share about today. And my wife and I have had an opportunity to step up into leadership and basically take over all of our company, Entre, take over all of our live events and start stepping into leading and running that program. We had another person that we kind of built out and developed our live events program with, and we ended up parting ways. And so Jacqueline, my wife, and I, we've stepped into leadership of these programs, which has really been a dream come true. We'd always had that vision, but so I'm actually coming to you from a camper's dorm at a kids summer camp down in Central Texas that we rent out the 10 months out of the year when they're not doing summer camp here. And we run, these leadership training events here. And so, I'm on this 250-acre ranch, and the accommodations are, it's a summer camp, but dude, it's I'm right where I want to be. I mean, like in the thick of it, surrounded by students out there, and really talking about what I want to share about here today, which is this concept that more and more has become the anchor principle of my entire life. And even before I say what it is, I want to say that part of what this principle encompasses is this belief that there is an anchor principle, or a value, or a purpose is the main word that we use, come from the French word for that which I propose. My purpose is my proposal. That which I stand for in the world, unapologetically and unrelentingly, is my purpose. And every human has one. And it's not to just hang in there and make a living. And it's not even just to take care of my family and love a few people well. It's to actually go do something in the world. be that, make Steve Jobs' proverbial dent in the universe. And having found what I believe mine is, which is to stand for, to develop, and to evangelize this idea of what I call love-based leadership, which I'm going to share about here. Never mind love-based leadership or whether anyone agrees with it, or I'll unpack it and people can each arrive at their own conclusions. But just knowing what the heck my purpose is, and waking up every day and feeling like I have a purpose, and it's a very clear purpose, and I have something, a true North Star that I can align everything in my life around. Am I embodying love-based leadership? Am I developing love-based leadership? Am I demonstrating love-based leadership? Am I teaching and preaching love-based leadership? Am I building the underlying qualities necessary to be effective at love-based leadership? Am I this? Am I that around love-based leadership? Am I being a love-based leadership as a husband, as a dad, as a business owner, as a human, as a person who goes to the grocery store and deals with the person checking out the groceries? Am I standing up for love-based leadership? And like every minute exchange, like when you have a guiding principle for life, whoo, it cleans up a lot of the mess. So that's actually the first principle of love-based leadership that I want to kind of share and stand for here, is to encourage everyone to just endlessly strive to figure out, what is it that I'm on this earth for? Mark Twain said the two most important days in a man's life: the day he's born, the day he figures out why. And until you live that second day, it's acceptable that all the days seem a little confusing and seem a little unclear and seem a little almost random and chaotic. But acting in faith that if I define my values, and I define my first principles, and I define to the literal letter the agreements by which I'm going to live my life, that in the spirit of getting fit for service or fit for the call, I will eventually reach that second day where all the experiences of my life make sense, because they've all been leading me to clarity and pointing me north toward this purpose. And then on that day, it will be revealed and it will be clear. And not only will it recontextualize my entire past and it all makes sense, but because I've been doing the work to be ready for the call, now I have a mission for my future that I'm excited to go after. And I'm telling you, like, all this stuff happens. You don't need as much sleep. You don't need as much food. You don't need as many relationships. The ones that mean most come closer to you. The ones that mean less go further from you, because it's all about optimization for the living of the purpose. But you have to start getting prepared for the call before you get the call, because you're not going to get the call until you're prepared for the call, right? So even to start acting in faith that I have a purpose is the first step of discovering it. So anyway, that's I've been on this journey, I would say my whole life. I dropped that. I know I was invited given a little bit of a format for what to share, and it kind of starts with like, what's my story? And by the way, Carrie, you and I, we've had a number of conversations, and that I talk a lot. So like, interrupt anytime, like,
no, you're great, brother. I love it, man. You get so much wisdom to share. It honestly, the only thing I'll say is it's such a cool concept, this love-based leadership. I'm glad you started with that, especially when it comes to personal development and, our 10 alignments, because you want to develop yourself as a leader, but having love at the forefront. So that it's right on topic. So yeah, have at it, man. And I'm going to run to the restroom, but everyone else is still listening, and I just need a bathroom break.
Dude, yeah, you got a happy hustle over to the lavatory. I feel that. No, I'm so grateful, and I should have started with this. I'm really just grateful to Carrie for having me here. And I'm grateful I can't actually see all of you, but I'm just so grateful you're out there and willing to give me a bit of your attention for a few minutes. And I'm really honored, and we'll strive to serve in that way. But yeah, so this concept of love-based leadership, I don't remember exactly where I was with it, but I'll say this. So a little bit of backstory. I was blessed with an early sense that the world seemed to have this agenda for me that wasn't really about what was best for me. It wasn't about what could be done for me or given to me. Not that I necessarily like that language, because that's kind of taker language, but like, the world isn't really set up for my benefit. And the world is generally run by institutions that have institutional agendas that diminish the individual in, the spirit of the collective. And that's the way the world is. That's actually the tension between love and fear. And, I'll get into that with love-based leadership. But I had this really palpable sense pretty early on, pretty young. And a lot of it was the books. My parents indulged me in reading some books that, you probably shouldn't give to kids unless you're prepared for the consequences of, free thought in the relatively unbounded mind of a child. And I just came to these conclusions like, I don't want to live this. I don't want to be a part of this. It's like kind of like the Matrix. It's like when Neo gives Morpheus gives Neo the red pill, and after that you can't unsee it. So I actually dropped out of high school because I believed pretty young that high school was job training, and job training was about being a brick in the foundation of social institutions. And social institutions were generally corruptive or corrosive because they're led and dominated by fear and power and money. And even though I didn't necessarily have all that language at a young age, I just had the feeling, that icky feeling that I think most of us feel most of the time when we're involved in, the agendas of the world's institutions. And I just chose out. I dropped out of high school. I went to my parents and I said, you can't make me go, but also because I think you love me and want what's best for me and know me well enough to know that I'm miserable, I don't think you even want to make me go, really, deep down. And they were like, well, we kind of don't, actually. We'd rather see our child have a day of joy than a life of misery. And you're clearly miserable every day, being a part of this. And we don't know what to do as your parents. So as long as you're prepared to sleep in the bed you make, and the bed you make when you drop out of high school, a lot of times ends up, looking like cooking French fries and flipping burgers at McDonald's someday, or, whoever will hire you without a high school diploma. But if you're willing to sleep in that bed, we're willing to help you make it. And they let me drop out of high school my junior year. And so it was the best thing for me. And it's, I'm a dad now, I have 4 kids, and by no means is this a prescription for life. But for me, what it meant was I'm stepping out of the paradigm that says the world will install for me the knowledge that will be required for me to be okay in life. And that's really the implicit premise or promise of education, is like, submit to this stuff for years and years of your childhood, and we will install into you the basic foundation of being informed enough and employable enough to not die. That's it. That's education. And then, like, maybe if you get some higher education or you get really passionate about a thing, you'll be one of the small percentage that does a little more than just not die, and does a little more than just have, like, kind of lower middle class, non-suck existence. You'll have like a little bigger house and a little nicer car and a little more joy and play a little more golf and retire a little earlier. But, oh yeah, by the way, the math on retirement, don't talk about that, because actually nowadays it doesn't really pencil out for anyone other than entrepreneurs. So, like, and so forth, right? So I didn't want any of that. And so the best thing about it was, as soon as I opted out of the idea that the world was going to give me the knowledge I needed to be okay, I now became personally responsible for constantly acquiring the knowledge I needed to be okay. And that meant that I didn't have that experience that most adults have, which is I get to 18 or I get to 22 or I get to 25 or whatever the age is, where I go, okay, the period of my life that's about learning is over. Now I'm going to transition into the period of my life that's about doing and getting paid. I never had that line of demarcation. So I'm still in the period of my life where I'm learning all the time and just trying to figure out how to get paid or be happy or feel fulfilled or, achieve whatever it is. And I think a lot about that, because when you opt out of the world system for telling you what you should want and then telling you what you should do to get what you should want, so that eventually you can feel how it says you should feel, when you opt out of all that, you're constantly having to, like, turn over the stones of your life and try to understand and analyze everything. It's a lot higher level of responsibility to walk the road less traveled. And so I have to think about, why do I even want these things? Why do I want what I want? What is it to want? What ultimately do I want? Because very often I get things that I want or that I said I wanted, and the want doesn't go away. It just moves to another thing that I now want. So what is it that we ultimately actually want? And what we want is to not want. That's what we want. We want to not feel like we want things all the time. It's called fulfillment. We want to feel filled full, so that there's nothing more to want and plug into the equation, right? And so eventually I stopped wanting things, or I started trying to want less and figure out how to fixate all my energy on wanting the one thing that would ultimately result in not wanting things anymore. And that's what led me to love-based leadership. And so, and there's a long circuitous journey that if I had more time, I could tell you, how I kind of put all these pieces together for myself, but it involved, being $500,000 in debts, 11 failed businesses through my 20s that sort of left me at this, heroic crisis moment. The hero's journey always involves this like massive existential crisis. And for me, that was about 16 years ago when I was $500,000 in debt. I was going into my second divorce. I had started to develop arthritis in my wrist. So my career as a professional piano player, which I left that out, but that's how I survived after dropping out of high school. And I wasn't one of those kid prodigies. I mean, I dropped out of high school to start learning how to play the piano at a really high level. And it took 3 years of like 12, 14 hours a day of practice. But by the time I was 19, my parents had said, okay, if you drop out, we'll still support you until you're 18, because that's what we would have done anyways if you'd stayed in school. But then after that, you're on your own. And I ended up begging them I was 18 and I was getting pretty good at the piano. I'd been playing seriously for about 2 years at that point. And I was like, guys, I'm pretty close to being able to get gigs and get paid, but like, just give me a little more time. I started auditioning at the local university and I'd get rejected, but I kept practicing and they could see that I was starting to get gigs. My first gigs, I got paid with food, not money, but like that itself was something. So like, oh, somebody's willing to give him a plate of food for his piano playing. He must be getting better. And eventually, by 19, I was actually able to start making a very meager living as a pianist. And that was kind of my bridge through my 20s as a working musician. But I ended up in a ton of debt. It was a hard life. I started all these businesses and failed. And then I was able to pay off all that debt because I got into this affiliate marketing program on the internet. And there were 40,000 students in this affiliate marketing program. And by my math, I would go through the community groups and the forums, and I figured out, I think out of 40,000 people in this community, probably less than 50 of them seemed to be making any real money. So it's like 1 in 1,000. Like, this is terrible. This is a disaster. This shouldn't even be legal, right? To teach a thing that has such a massive failure rate. But as I started studying the people that were doing well with it, I realized, because it's affiliate marketing, it's truly the same for everyone. Like, there's no way, like it's the same basic math of every person. Like, here's the offer, here's the sales page, here's the commission structure, here's the audiences to market to. Like, all the variables are the same for everyone. So how is it that a few people are doing so well, the vast majority are doing so terribly? And as I studied them, it all came down to psychology. It was the psychology of sales and marketing. They were just better at it. They got certain things that were non-obvious and counterintuitive that everybody else didn't get. So I studied those things and I essentially used psychology to become one of the top 3 affiliates in that program. And in 18 months, I paid off $500,000 in debt. So I now had a basic data point at 29 years old that psychology or whatever the unlock in a particular thing is can put you in an elite category where all of the mathematical probabilities of a thing no longer apply to you because you've set yourself apart. And this is true in virtually everything in life, right? There's like a few people that write books that sell all the books, and the vast majority of people that write books that, only they sell it to their mom and their roommate or whatever, right? A few people that write screenplays get, Hollywood movies made, and most people never do. A few people that make music get discovered, and most people never do. Like, anybody that's doing anything creative or even entrepreneurship, right? Like, a few people that get their startup funded, go, grow a unicorn company, and most people never do, right? There's always, and we can go through life assuming that that's luck, but that's a really destructive, defeatist worldview. And since all worldviews, I love positive psychology because it essentially says all worldviews are equally absurd because we'll never have enough data to know. We're not a supercomputer. So you have to start intentionally choosing the ones that have the best effect on who you become over time for holding those beliefs, because that's the only thing you can actually do to increase the probability underneath it, right? And so I started adopting this worldview of like, it is possible to be in that elite slice of any population doing anything in the world. And I did it in sales and marketing, and therefore I paid off all my debt with affiliate marketing in like 18 months.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Apologies for interrupting your programming, but I have to tell you, the best investment you can make in yourself is one in which helps you acquire skills. You've probably heard people talk about, oh, just invest in yourself and you'll be successful. Yes, that's true to a degree, but you have to invest in skills that will ultimately help you achieve your desired results. And I think one of the best skills one can possess, be it an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, is the sales sword. Really knowing how to sell, utilizing pressure free persuasion, which will make you more money and more impact. Now, if you want to know how to sell more efficiently and effectively, I just launched a sales course called The Proven Roadmap Process to Selling Millions of Dollars and helping you to increase your conversions guaranteed. And you can get access to this new sales course that the Happy Hustle is launching at thehappyhustle.com/sales. And if you act fast, you'll get it at the lowest price it'll ever be available, because we are launching it and we want to gain amazing testimonials and social proof to further share this knowledge. So if you act fast, you can get it at the lowest price it'll ever be. That's at thehappyhustle.com/sales. Now let's get back to this episode.
So then next phase of my life, I went into relation. I met a woman. She was a single mom. She had 3 kids. She'd had a lot of trauma. She had a death of a spouse by suicide. And I was a train wreck. Emotionally, I was an only child. And I had all my dysfunction, 2 divorces, and we partnered up and we're like, kind of had the same mindset of like, we may be really terrible at this. First of all, there's high enough stakes to try to get better because there's kids involved. But like, let's see what happens if we take a year and try to master being in a relationship. And I had just made good money as an affiliate marketer, so I could afford quite a bit of therapy and had the time to go spend hours. We'd go to therapy, and instead of like, oh, we got to get back to work, I would leave the therapist's office and we would drive around for hours and hours trying to retrain ourselves to have very basic conversation, like 4th grader level conversations. Like, what do we want for dinner tonight? But how do we learn to have a conversation, a low stakes conversation about what we want to have for dinner tonight in a way that's so clean? So the methodology we were learning in communication was called nonviolent communication. That's so nonviolent, that's so non-power based, that so doesn't make the other person wrong, no matter what my particular feeling or opinion or perspective is. And you can go read books on this stuff, but we drove around for hours, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours. And in 5 years, I think we calculated that we did about 1,000 hours a year of some sort of therapy or cognitive behavioral training, retraining, and essentially dug ourselves out of this pit where we were fighting every day. We were yelling every day. We were, even like slamming doors and punching holes in walls and being physically, fortunately we never struck each other, but we were striking stuff. Like, it was a intense, aggressive level, terrible energy. And we climbed our way out from that to just creating this sort of like rapturous connection that, and we did it all by rewiring ourselves at the level of basic communication. And so I'm like, oh, you can use psychology and you can use like mind mechanics and you can retrain, you can become empowered to transcend the probabilistic average of what to expect in a relationship or in a family dynamic, just like I did previously in one business modality. And by the way, at the same time, I had started a different type of business called, it was a digital agency. It wasn't anything fancy, but in a very commoditized, very, it's a pretty generic category of like setting up Google map listings for small businesses and doing SEO and building websites. Like, this is stuff that nowadays you go on Upwork and get it done for $100 or whatever. We built this really badass agency that in 5 years we did about 30 million in sales, and all my financial dreams came true. But the reason was because I was bringing these therapeutic concepts into the workplace, and the work environment was starting to become like this personal growth laboratory that people love to be a part of. And even though we had a pretty unsexy, very generic business model, just the energy and the way people showed up on the phones and the way people came into work, and they came in early and they stayed late and they got and our output was just more than our competitors. And I ended up building this really great business and being able to exit it and sell it. And I sold my first business. And basically at 39, I was retired. And along the way, by the way, we went from being really out of shape to getting in the best shape of our lives. And we took on a health practice. And so I kind of had this existential moment about 5 years ago where I looked at my life and I said, okay, and comparison is the thief of joy, right? I don't really like to say I'm better or worse than anyone else. That is very non-love based from a leadership mindset. But even just relative to myself and where I'd been in the 10 years prior, when I was broke, I was out of shape, I was depressed, I was twice divorced, I was injured, I was depressed, just everything was terrible. And in like 10 years, I'm 39. I just sold my business, my second successful business in a row. I'm financially retired. I have this incredible marriage, these incredible kids. I have this incredible life. I feel great. I'm energized. I don't know how did this happen? And I looked around at all my neighbors. I remember standing in my front yard looking around at all my neighbors and like, they all did what you're supposed to do. They all went to college and they're all grinding it out. And I live in a pretty nice upper middle class neighborhood, a lot of VPs and managers and white collar executives around me, and they're all grinding it out at work every day, trying to kiss some boss's ass to get that raise or promotion and pay off their student loans. And meanwhile, the high school dropout jazz musician derelict is like retired, chilling in his front yard. So how did this happen? So I started connecting all these sort of non-obvious, non-object oriented, principles-based choices that I had made and juxtaposed them to all the choices that other people seem to be making around society's prescription for how to travel the path of life. And I just decided there's something here. Like I should share this. I should, teach or preach or, maybe answer questions that nobody's even asking me right now. And the content that I started creating to basically do what I just described ended up catching on and becoming the foundation of what is now Entre Institute, which we've come to coin as the world's first life design platform. And it's basically built on a methodology that says you can take the entirety of your life, and we break it into what we call the 4 Ps: your physical life, your personal life, your professional life, and ultimately your purpose. And you can engineer an entire life, just like you can take a computer and reformat the hard drive and install a new operating system and debug the software and do all this stuff and get the thing running the way it's supposed to. You can literally do the same thing for your life. And trust me, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But it's going to require taking on some really, really deep, usually unconscious assumptions and beliefs and thought patterns. It's not enough to just like, oh, I'm going to quit my job and start an online business. That's just a cosmetic. That's just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic of most people's lives, right? You got to go a lot deeper than that. And so there's a few basic principles. And Carrie, steer me on time, right? Because you know me, I'll talk.
Well, you're coming up. I want to leave time for everyone to ask a couple questions.
Cool.
So bring it home in like a minute, and then we can get a couple minutes of questions if that's cool.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to sum up. I mean, I'm trying to put a watermelon through a garden hose right now. So I'm going to sum up the basic tenets of love-based leadership, which are at the core of this life design system, this life design methodology that I believe any human being can use to transform the totality of their life, physically, personally, professionally, all ultimately in orientation towards their purpose, that once they find, then they're truly unleashed. So first of all, communication is how you create your entire life. And if you don't like your life, that's the place to start. Or even if you do like, again, I'm not big on value judgments. Anyone can improve their life by improving their communication. And by improvement, I'm not using good, bad moralism. I'm just saying effective or ineffective in terms of other people, right? And alignment, like win-win. Or we both, are me and the person I'm talking to together going in a desired direction as a function of our relationship? That all comes down to our communication, right? And by the way, the foundation of love-based leadership from a communication perspective is not mine at all. It's the work of a gentleman named Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote the book called Nonviolent Communication and created a whole, theory around how to communicate in a way that removes ego and that creates connection between the conversants rather than authority. Authority and connection are opposites. If I'm above you, I'm not connected to you. If I'm below you, I'm not connected to you. But there's a way to operate in the world where you can be on a level field with everyone, even if you're their boss, even if you're their appointed manager, what John Maxwell calls positional leadership, right? Like a title or something. So that's one. That's the first piece, communication. The second thing is most people tend to, because we're driven, we tend to be more motivated by pain than, the transcendent rewards of like fulfillment, let's say. We tend to think about where is the area where I'm hurting the most, and then we myopically fixate on addressing that. And I want us to play through. Let's imagine that money is a part of a person's life where they have a pain point. Imagine you did what I did and you solved just that pain point. So now let's say your physical life and your personal life are here and your professional or financial life is down here. But then you solve that and now your financial life is way up here. You actually have a bigger gap between the best part of your life and the worst part of your life than you did before when your financial life was the worst part of your life. Now it's the best part of your life, but the gap between your personal and physical life is actually bigger, which means you want more, not less, which means you're less happy, not more. Because we will always experience the gap between the best part of our life and the worst part of our life as our reality. And that gap determines how we feel. So unless we raise all areas of our life, then only raising one area of our life actually makes us less happy, not more. And that's why when I had solved the financial problems in my life, I was actually a worse husband. I was a worse father than I would have been. I was less happy. I was more depressed. I was literally borderline suicidal, even though I no longer had money problems, because I actually had a bigger gap now between the best part of my life and the rest of my life. So you got to raise everything. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And unless you improve everything, you actually make yourself less happy by improving just one thing. Like, by the way, the entire industry of self-improvement, if everybody believed what I just said, the whole thing just went out of business because everybody's so myopically focused. I shouldn't say everybody, that's reductionist language. Most offers in the world are myopically focused on improving just one area of your life, which means they actually make you less happy the more successful they are. So there's one. And then I think another is how we identify success. How do we define success? To me, success is, am I fully able to be myself and feel true and authentic to self across the broadest possible range of human experiences? The extent to which I'm not having to put on different masks and play different characters across different areas of my life is the extent to which I'm successful. Because if I'm doing that, it's always indicative of unmet wants and unmet needs that I'm having to adapt to different environments to try to get. Whereas if I'm just simply myself across the entire range of human experience, and by the way, I don't shy away from some of that human experience because it would put me in an environment where I didn't know how to be myself. Like if I can do the whole thing as me, I'm successful. Because I've transcended want, and I'm clearly not wanting because I'm no longer adapting to try to get, right? So that's a principle there. And by the way, like when you do all this, when you show up this way, people are like, I don't know what it is, but it feels different. I think I might want to work with this guy, or I think I might want to buy from this guy, or I think I might want to do whatever it looks like to get in proximity to this person. And all of a sudden your business works better, your team works harder, your wife or husband is happier, your kids are happier, your household feels better, you're more inspired to go to the gym because you feel better. And like it just, again, the rising tide starts to happen. And so ultimately, and what starts to disappear is ego, because all your relationships are now built on connection. And as you start to experience a life where ego or authority or dominance or power or being above actually makes you feel worse because it diminishes connection, then eventually you get to this place where you experience a life of love-based leadership, which is essentially being in service to your fellow humans all the time by adding more value than you're taking. And there's this, and then when you get clear on your purpose, which will happen once you've created that clarity in which it can emerge, I guess if I was going to sum all this up and be done and get to the Q&A, I would just say, if we're willing to challenge enough presuppositions that were given to us before we were old enough to realize what was happening, we actually can create the life of our dreams while we're still alive. And it doesn't look like some, retirement plan that we got from Merrill Lynch. It can happen now.
Oh my goodness, Jeff. bringing the fire, my brother. Dang. Let's give Jeff a round of applause, some virtual love, y'all. And man, oh man, Jeff, where can people go just to learn more about you, to follow you online? What's some links that we can plug in? Because I know I just had one person personally message me. He's like, I've never heard of Jeff, but that guy is a badass.
Well, I
So
appreciate that. So,
yeah.
if you haven't heard of me, I'm actually happy to hear that, because one of the banes of my existence is we run so dang many ads.
Hmm.
Like our company I think we do about 50 million ad impressions a month across
Whoa.
the Meta and Google ecosystems. And so I feel like a huge number of people do at least recognize me. And, I get stopped in airports like, hey, aren't you that guy from YouTube with that thing? And so it's like the irony of my life is that in my world, I'm this like, I strive to be very non-ego based, to be a love-based leader, to communicate in a way that focuses on connection rather than
Hmm.
impressing anyone. But out front, the world knows me as like a pitchman for like a thing. And so I intentionally came on here with nothing to sell, nothing even to offer. And I basically just was like, if you're interested in these ideas and you want to hear me unpack them further, check out my YouTube channel. If somebody wants to go into our world or our funnel, like it's easy to find those little rabbit holes. But if somebody just wants to check me out on YouTube, I'm grateful for their attention.
Yeah, definitely worth checking Jeff out on YouTube, and also Entre Institute. Just mention that just briefly for people out there.
Yeah, so I'd say if you heard all the words that just poured out of my mouth and were like, there was some stuff in there that sounded cool. I wonder what it would look like to try to operationalize some of that in my life and actually have kind of a step-by-step sequence to move into this way of being. And like I want to be really clear. Like nothing disappoints me more than the world's obsession with paint by numbers solutions that presumably lead to a, a problem solved in my life, because it's fundamentally like illogical to say like I have uniquely created a mess in my life, but there's some paint by numbers solution that's guaranteed to solve it the same way for every person that has it. Our problems are unique. So we're not going to find some solution that's one size fits all. And yet the entire industry of making our lives better in every category, it's like everybody can quit smoking with this one method. Everybody can lose weight with this one method. Everybody can fix their marriage with this one method. Everybody can make money with this one method. Anytime it's with this one method, it's denying the uniqueness of your own challenges. And yet, but we're just so desperate for solutions, we buy into the like, take a pill, fix your problem mindset. So that is not what Entre is. Entre will guide you through installing these mindsets and skill sets and habits and practices to get you to the place where it's not just that you've learned how, or you've had one problem addressed, you've become the person that can go out into the world and deal with anything you got going on. And by the way, how you deal with one thing, it ends up resolving everything. And ultimately you get to where we're not just solving problems or trying to be at zero, we're actually stacking awesomeness. That's and Entre would be the place to go put this stuff into practice.
Yeah, definitely the place to put it into practice. And if you want to have the three freedoms that, Jeff and I talk about, and I know all the happy hustlers desire: creative, time, and financial freedom, Entre, I feel like, is the ticket, because you can learn from Jeff's mistakes and other people's mistakes and not have to make them on your own. And if you want true freedom, like, you have to be an entrepreneur or have your own business in some capacity. Would you agree with that statement, Jeff?
I mean, there's rare exceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you have to be entrepreneurial, even, like take a guy like Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, right? He did not have to start a business to have as much freedom as he could probably or possibly know what to do with it, because he could just retire tomorrow if he doesn't want to work anymore, and he's got plenty of money, right? But when you listen to Satya Nadella, you're listening to someone that has navigated his career with an extremely entrepreneurial thought process. By the way, he's also a proponent of nonviolent communication. One of the reasons he's risen to the top of the ranks at Microsoft is because it feels so good to be in a relationship with him, even just a working relationship, that the people that worked for him lifted him up into leadership because they like his style, because he communicates in the same way where it's about connection, not authority.
Yeah. And that's a great distinction. Like being an entrepreneur, I think they call it, right?
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
you're
Yeah.
entrepreneurial by nature, but you're inside of a construct. And then if you make enough money, then you can retire on your own and not have to work.
Here's how I would re-explain what I just said. It's not that you have to be an entrepreneur. It's that you have to be an outlier
Mm.
to get free. I mean, freedom is a statistical improbability for most people, especially if you look at like total freedom, financial freedom, emotional freedom, spiritual freedom, like very few touch it. So you have to be an outlier. The awesome thing about entrepreneurs is we've accepted a priori that we either have to be an outlier or we fail,
Mm.
because most entrepreneurs don't win in the entrepreneurial equation, right? So like we willingly play a game every day where either I'm in the top 1 to 5% or I take my ball and go home.
Mm.
Most people that have an employment mindset, it's a compromised model where it's like, okay, I can be at the 50th percentile, I can be at the 77th percentile, or I can be at the 23rd percentile. I can be anywhere in the big fat part of the bell curve and still get a paycheck and still not lose. So the employment mindset doesn't divide the world into a thin slice of those that win and a massive slice of those that lose. The employment mindset sees the world as a spectrum of varying degrees of not losing. And so it doesn't have the same incentive to obsessively strive for excellence.
Mm.
That's the big difference.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I see a light bulb in the chat from Chris. I'm hoping this is turning on light bulbs from everyone. Guys, I want to respect the Q&A. If you have a question for Jeff, now's your chance. Or potentially you can, put it on his YouTube channel, a comment there, or, send him a DM on Instagram or whatnot. But now you have his attention, and this could be a time to get some real insight. I got to say though, Jeff, man, it's really impressive what you've been able to build coming from such humble roots, and like, now having over $100 million to your name in sales. Like that's insane. And I know it's something that a lot of people can learn from. When it comes to sales, I got to just, I want to ask this for my own selfish inquiry. What's your frame on sales? Some people think it's slimy. Some people think it's, deceptive. I feel like when I have a product or service that I believe in so much, I almost feel it's a disservice not to sell it well. What's your take on sales?
Yeah. So I'm holding back because I don't want to come off as ego-based, but because sales is a game where people evaluate credibility as a quantitative function, I will actually say that I'm actually career now over $200 million in sales.
Oh, geez. Okay.
But
got to update that bio.
yeah, I know. I need whatever. Honestly, making money is the least interesting part of what I talk about to me, not because it's not hugely important, but because it's the thing that people get the most distracted by.
Mm.
Like, oh, now he's talking about make money. Now I'm really going to listen. When actually the things that would ultimately produce the most financial outcome were the other things I was talking about that didn't sound as much like they were about making money, but they were. Right. So it's like now we've thrown a red herring and, oh, look, squirrel, right? He's talking about making money. But but that is actually, I mean, that goes to the answer to your question of my belief in sales is that you earn the right for someone to give you their money when you've become a person, and not just become a person, but done the work to create something of such value that you make someone's life better by selling it to them. I mean, like, full stop. That's it. And that's a function of, product, feature, and benefit. It's also a function of, love and spiritual intention. It's also a function of quality and integrity and first principles. Like, only if you're the person who 4 years after somebody buys a product, assuming that the product had some implied 4-year deliverable, that you're maybe you went through a divorce, maybe your dog died, maybe you contracted metastatic cancer, maybe this, maybe that. Are you the person whose first principles are still going to have you delivering on your service level agreement 4 years after you took the money? Like, only you know that. By the time the customer finds out one way or another, it's probably too late. So
Mm,
I don't think most people, my experience of a lot of entrepreneurs is that they haven't done enough work on themselves to really feel like they deserve that money.
mm,
And so they end up resorting to the kind of tactics you use when underneath it all, you don't feel confident enough in your value to sell without having to sell.
mm. Dang, mic drop on that note, man. Jeff Lerner, some virtual love to Jeff Lerner, y'all. And if you're watching the replay, definitely check out his stuff. The YouTube channel is straight fuego. Kenton saying, mind blown. There's some awesome comments in the chat for you, Jeff. But
Oh,
man, I
cool.
appreciate you, man. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Kevin Walton is our next speaker, talking about spirituality. Jeff, you and Kevin would totally vibe. I mean, this is one of my brothers from another mother for real. I know I've said that pretty much to everybody, but Kevin, let me bring you on if you're here, so you can at least meet Jeff virtually, and then Jeff, I'm going to kind of take you off the co-host. But thank you again, man, for popping in, and I'm so grateful for you, brother. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.